Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of WTWO's Beyond the Stands. Of course, I'm your host, Rick Semmler. Really excited today to have my guest on. I'm usually all about high school and college sports. Going to take a little different route today, and we're going to talk pro sports with a former colleague of mine, coworker, someone I've always respected. We went to college together, so we go way back in the day. I'm talking about Jeremiah Johnson. He's the pregame, post-game TV guy for the Pacers. He's also their sideline reporter for the Blue and Gold. He's been doing it for years. He also, back in the day, worked with me at WTWO. So we'll get to that later in the show. But JJ joins me from Indy. JJ, good to see you.
It's all good. Good to see you, Rick. First day in May, and the Pacers are still playing basketball, so that's one of the things that it makes the job very rewarding when the team can have success. And they're in the middle of quite a run, and as you mentioned, got my start in Terre Haute, sideline reporter of the Sycamores back in the day, so I don't know if I would be where I am today without ISU and WTWO. So we'll look forward to chatting about that in a little bit.
We will get to that in a little bit because I got some stories on JJ. I don't think people here know, and they'll enjoy these stories. But we got to talk Pacers first, and I want to go all the way back to the beginning of the season. It was no secret expectations were high for this group, but they didn't start the year off very well. You travel with this team. You spend more time with this team than most people. Did you just feel that they were buying their time trying to get to the groove that they are right now?
You know, it seems like a cop-out answer, but the injuries were a bigger deal than I think anyone realized outside of the locker room and then even inside the locker room at the time. I mean, you thought that they were a deep team so they could withstand some injuries, but they really tweaked their defensive philosophy in the offseason. And when you had Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard both injured at the same time, those two guys were integral in what they wanted to do defensively. And so when you remove them, and then the third player that isn't even playing a whole lot right now is Ben Shepherd, but at least at the start of the year, his impact defensively was felt also. So at one time, you're missing all those players. Now you had Turner, you had Halliburton, you had Siakam, you had Matherin. I mean, you had a lot of those guys healthy, but some of your most important defenders were not there over a large period of time. And I think guys were just looking around trying to, figure out how to get through it. And to be honest, at 10 and 15, they were maybe even lucky to be 10 and 15 because it seemed like so many of their wins were of the clutch variety within 5 points with 5 minutes to play or less. And so they got to that point. They started to get Nembhard and Nesmith back healthy. They went on a road trip just prior to Christmas where they won all of the games on a West Coast trip, which is not easy to do. And that sort of propelled them into January, where that was one of the best months in quite some time. Rick Carlisle, coach of the month in the conference, Andrew Nembhard, defensive player of the month in the conference. So really they were able to almost stay above water, get back to 500 around Christmas time or just after Christmas, and then really take off in January.
When you speak of taking off in January, and I mean, they started playing great basketball since then, did you just feel it click when the guys got back, like this is the team that we thought that they could be?
Yeah, I'll admit there was some anxious moments from the players in the front office when they started the season 10 and 15. And all it takes is a couple of really big wins, especially what I would say road wins. Road wins can really galvanize a team. And they went through a stretch where they had won like 9 straight road games. And that's not easy to do. And when you can go into hostile environments against good teams and win games, it creates a little bit of confidence, and you believe at that point you can beat anyone. And then the home court advantage really started to matter once the calendar turned to 2025. And they also had a trip to Paris, which they won one game, they lost one game against the Spurs. It was the only 2 games of the regular season that I was not with the team. We broadcasted those 2 games remotely, but it just felt like that was maybe good for chemistry as well. And so the Paris trip also allowed them to have no back-to-backs in the month of January. So the schedule was a little more spread out. And for a team that plays up and down like the Pacers do, they benefit from rest. We've seen so many times this season when they have 2 or 3 days off, that first game after a little bit of a break, they're not rusty. They're refreshed and ready to go, and they really cause problems in a full-court style of game, which is another reason I'm looking forward already to what'll happen on Sunday night in Cleveland because they'll have a little rest since that Game 5 win on Tuesday.
We'll get to the Cleveland series here in a couple minutes. I'm eager to talk about that. They always say you want to be playing your best basketball at the end of the season, and the Pacers certainly fit that mold with the way they enter the postseason. So you get the Bucks again, a team Pacers very familiar with. Just how confident do you feel the guys were heading into the playoffs to take on the Bucks?
They were confident, but it was a different atmosphere than one season ago for two reasons. Giannis was not healthy in that playoff series that the Pacers won last season. But the Pacers, despite that, were the team that everyone picked. And it's a little unusual. You know, teams in Indiana nationally sometimes don't get that respect. They play with the chip on their shoulder. I know you like to cover teams that are underdogs. And it was rare that when you would open up ESPN.com before that Bucks series, you would see 13, 12 out of 15 experts pick the Pacers. And so it was almost a little bit scary. And that's why it was so important when you had the home court advantage to make a statement in game one and actually to win both of the first two games of the series. Once they did that, I felt really good about their chances because you saw some of the weaknesses that Milwaukee had. Damian Lillard, before suffering the Achilles injury, when he came back in games 2 and 3, just was not himself. And so that hurt Milwaukee a little bit. And really the guys around Giannis were not as good this season as maybe they've been in the past. They missed a guy like Chris Middleton. Brooke Lopez is aging, and the Pacers almost played him off the court. So you saw early in the series, I think the players were confident going in, but once they had that first game or two, and you knew even if they lost the game, they still would have that home court advantage. I think it was a matter of, when, not if, that they would take care of the Bucks.
So they win in 5. I got to ask you about Tuesday night's game. I saw you tweet about it. I wasn't there, but I watched on TV. That incredible finish, and I saw that stat. I know it's been thrown around. Down 7, less than 40 seconds to go in overtime. And in the last 20 years for playoff teams, they were 1,176 losses, down 7 points or more with 40 seconds to go in a game. You were there. How crazy and bizarre what took place and unfolded for the Pacers to wrap up the series?
Oddly enough, there were 3 different times where you thought it's not looking good. And the first one happened early in the game. The Bucks scored the first 13 points, and they would build the lead to as many as 20 points. And so you mentioned the stat about the last 40 seconds, but in Pacers playoff history, and that's an extensive history, a lot of games, at least in the NBA portion, the Pacers had never been down 20 in a playoff game and come back to win. Now, when they were down 20, I still had that confidence. Long way to go. We saw in March and April a lot of times where the Pacers made comebacks, but some of those were against teams that were maybe lottery bound, that started playing with a lot of energy in the first half, and let's be honest, maybe they were incentivized to not finish the game off. So you had one of those comebacks against Dallas, one against Brooklyn, teams that were more focused on Dallas got in, but they were very shorthanded. Long story short, you don't expect great chances when you're down 20 against Giannis and a team like Milwaukee with desperation, but they cut it to 6 at halftime. And at that point, you're like, all right, it's just going to be a matter of time. And it just kept going back and forth. And at the end of regulation, down about 6 with 5 or 6 minutes to go, you've got to get some stops and some scores. I mean, you got to string together a good 3 or 4 minutes. And, I think they were down 4 with about a minute to play in regulation, and Tyrese Halliburton gets 2 free throws, gets a dunk, ties the game. You have to withstand a Giannis last-second attempt. And then it goes to overtime, and you think, all right, you go to overtime, you've got the home court advantage, the Bucks are tired, and Tyrese hits the first basket at 3, and you kind of already chalk it up as a win, and then all of a sudden the Bucks come back and, so a lot of talk will be about those last 40 seconds, but that's what made the game so wild is in your head, you're watching and you're sort of projecting. And for me personally, it's personal because I had to make plans to go to Milwaukee if the Pacers lose. So you're kind of mentally preparing for your weekend to be a little more busy than it would be. And especially at 7 with 40 seconds, AJ Green's going to the line actually at 6. He makes 1 of 2. A lot has to go right. And for the Pacers to win that game without fouling again, and, at best you would think maybe you would get it tied up. To actually win, just crazy. So it was, and then the atmosphere on the court was just a whole nother little level of pandemonium where you had to kind of keep your head on a swivel. And I was just waiting for when I could feel comfortable starting the walk-off interview with Miles Turner and not have it interrupted by any shenanigans. So definitely one of those moments that I'll always remember, and it was fun to be a part of it.
Got to thank our sponsors of the show. We got Crow Equipment Incorporated and Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning, your 2018 American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning Building a Higher Standard Award winner. For quality and reliability you can depend on, call Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning, 765-832-9401. You spoke of the end of the game or after the game. It's rare, sometimes teams say they don't like each other, but you truly sense that the Bucks and Pacers just don't like each other. They played, I think I saw 19, 20 times the last 2 years, and there's been a lot of scuffles and words exchanged. You're closer than anybody. Is that true that those two teams just truly don't like each other?
Pretty much. I do think there is a respect with certain players individually. Like, we don't need to go into great detail, but you saw what happened with Giannis and Tyrese's dad. But Giannis did say he has a great amount of respect for Tyrese. And Tyrese, I think, has that for Giannis. The Damian Lillard, Tyrese Halliburton rivalry is real. Despite all, and I credit Tyrese for what he had to say after Lillard was hurt. Some really good comments. But they are rivals. I don't think they like each other a whole lot. And then I don't know that anybody on the Pacers likes Bobby Portis. And then the fan bases are getting into this. Rick, we go back to, Pacers Knicks, and then you go Pacers Pistons. Bulls to an extent, even though the Pacers and Bulls only played one time in the playoffs, surprisingly, during the late 90s. But Bucks is up there. That's at the top of the rivalry meter right now. And if the Pacers would somehow play the Knicks in the playoffs, I don't see the animosity with those two teams right now as I do with the Bucks. Now, the Pistons is the sneaky the rivals coming up here, where I think in the next couple years you might see Pacers, Bucks, Pacers, Pistons. Like, those are the games you're going to want to see. And then spinning it forward, we'll see what happens after 7 games with Cleveland. But you were accurate. 20 games over 2 seasons. You can't help but build a little bit of animosity when you play that many times, and you have the high-profile games. You have things like the ball gate where Giannis goes crazy. But let's not forget when he said you got to win and be humble. The night he had 64 points and chased after the basketball, you could argue how humble he was at that point. So, these two teams do not like each other, but the Pacers have bragging rights right now.
You mentioned Tyrese and Giannis respect, but Dame and Tyrese kind of have that rivalry. I find it interesting, everything that came out in the media, social media, about Tyrese being overrated this week or the last couple of weeks. And I feel like he's already an all-star, one of the better players in the league. And you spoke of playing with a chip on your shoulder. I feel like has a chip on his shoulder and taken his game to another level in the playoffs. Do you feel that way about Tyrese?
It's one of those things where I think people look at him and the shot has a little bit of an awkward nature to it, and they've seen him burst onto the scene, and maybe some players would say he didn't pay his dues. He's not at the level of some of these other players. He was on the Olympic team, but he didn't play. So that probably feeds into it a little bit. But I would also say, that all comes from an athletic article where the athletic writers are tasked to go try to get players that they cover to answer those questions. And not every team has an athletic writer, first of all. And the Bucks do. The Pacers do not have a dedicated athletic beat writer. And I know for a fact that the Bucks writer participated in this. We don't know who said what. But let's say he got 6 players to all, answer that question. And we've said what the Bucks feel about the Pacers. If all 6 of those guys said that they thought Tyrese Halliburton was overrated, to me, the poll's a little bit skewed and not as many national people. But whatever. It's one of the things about media right now. People enjoy that kind of column, that kind of poll, that kind of article. And if Tyrese has to use it for motivation, so be it. I will tell you who knows that Tyrese Halliburton is not overrated. Anybody in the state of Indiana. You saw what happened when he was injured last season. When he's not on the court and when he's not available, this is not a team that is capable of making a run to the second round of the playoffs, to the conference finals. Who knows? If he's not available, I'm not 100% that they're even a playoff team. He's that important. So the overrated talk, it's just talk, and kind of is what it is at this point.
That's why I had you on, give me insight. I didn't realize every team didn't have an athletic reporter. That makes sense, though, of where that stuff comes from. So we're moving forward now. Pacers-Cavs series starts Sunday in Cleveland. Game 2 Tuesday in Cleveland. Game 3 next Friday in Indy. And then Mother's Day next Sunday. Mother's Day next Sunday, you have in Indy again. Those are the first 4 games, and we'll go hopefully longer than that, but those are the first 4 games in the series. I guess, first of all, JJ, the 2 teams played 4 times during the regular season. Pacers won 3-1. 2 of those games, I know many, including myself, kind of discredit because it was the backups playing in April, but the 2 games they met back in January, the 2 teams split. Your initial thought going into the series, the Cavs top seed in the Eastern Conference, Pacers the 4. How do you see this series going into it?
To me, it's a matchup of very similar teams. Now, not player for player or necessarily the same stylistically, but they're teams that are built on depth, and they'll play maybe more reserves than maybe some of the other teams that are going to be playing in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference or Western Conference semifinals. And so that is a little bit similar. I'm really looking forward to the backcourt matchups. You got, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, 2 high-scoring guards, but maybe not your best defensive guards. And then on the Pacers side, you have Tyrese Haliburton and Andrew Nembhard. So I'm looking forward to seeing that matchup, seeing who Andrew Nembhard will guard. Probably Mitchell, you would think, and if he can lock him down. Andrew Nembhard is just an outstanding defensive guard, and it's good to have him available when you're going against some of these elite scorers. And, you brought up the matchups in January. Those 2 are relevant, even though it was 3 or 4 months ago, especially when you consider that the one the Pacers won was in Cleveland, and Tyrese Haliburton did not play in the second half. Now, the Pacers were down at halftime. You didn't have Haliburton. You almost thought it was one of those situations where it's just not going to be your night. You move on to the next one. And some of the other Pacers chose to not listen to that and to come back. So maybe Cleveland even let up a little bit, and then Tyrese did not play in the next one, that Cleveland one. So I would say for the most part, don't take too much out of any of the 4. You almost have to start from scratch. I also, despite what you saw in that Heat series, obviously Cleveland just dominated Miami. I don't know if Cleveland is as good at the end of the season as they were at the start of the season. I mean, the way they started off like 12 or 13-0, and then basically hardly until January, maybe, I don't think they lost 3 straight games at any particular time. So it'll be a challenge. This will be back to what we're used to with the experts all picking the team not named the Pacers, right? I haven't seen the articles yet, but it's fair to say if it's the column on ESPN.com with 15 writers, 13 or 14 are probably going to pick the Cavs. But I could see a lot of them making that prediction in 6 or 7. I do think it's going to be a long series, a fun series, a competitive series. And I think the Pacers do go into this with a fair amount of confidence. And the important thing you want to stay is they're going to be healthy. Haliburton and Nesmith were a little banged up towards the end of the first round series. They get a few days to prepare. Everyone else pretty much good to go. And so I like the Pacers. I like the Pacers at full strength competing against anyone. And I'm looking forward to seeing the matchup against Cleveland.
I want to remind everybody you can follow Beyond the Stands on Spotify, CastBox, Pocket Cast, iHeartRadio, and, of course, on WTWO's website, mywabashvalley.com. Okay, so you talked about the backcourt matchup, which a lot of people are eyeing, but in your mind, maybe 1 or 2 things that you think, besides that backcourt, have to happen in this series for the Pacers to pull it out.
Well, Tyrese Haliburton is a facilitator first and foremost, and he starts games a lot of times getting his teammates involved. But there had been a little bit of a plea, even from my Pacers Live pre-post-game analyst, Eddie Gill, to get more 2s, to attack the basket. And sometimes he's a little reluctant to do that. Now, it might have been easier against Milwaukee without much rim protection on the Bucks than against, let's say, Jared Allen or Evan Mobley inside. So you have to be cautious. You can't just go in there without being aware of the surroundings and the circumstances. But what you saw in overtime from Haliburton, the success he had attacking the basket, it's going to be what I'm watching early in this series. You don't want him just settling for the deep threes. I like him to attack, and then I think everything else opens up, whether it's his threes or maybe he attacks and there's help and then he finds an open man. So I want to see an aggressive mindset offensively from Tyrese Haliburton. The other thing that I'm probably a little concerned with, going into the series is rebounding. It's been a little bit of a bugaboo for the Pacers really for quite some time. And teams that place an emphasis on crashing the offensive glass have had success against the Pacers. Milwaukee, not one of those teams. They want to make sure to get back in transition defense. Doc Rivers is pretty clear in saying he doesn't want anyone to just crash from wherever on the court. If you're in there, try to go get it. And even despite that, the Bucks had, probably too many second chance opportunities in that series. Cleveland will crash more than Milwaukee. Can you make them pay by securing rebounds and getting fast break opportunities? The numbers I'll be watching in the series are second chance points and fast break points. If the Pacers can be at least even or not beaten too badly in second chance points and they can have more fast break points than the Cavs, they'll be in good position, I think.
Well, you heard him talk the Pacers, so we're going to end our Pacers talk, and I appreciate him doing all that. I know he's a busy guy. He's getting ready to head to Cleveland here soon, calling from his home in Indy. So I want to enlighten everybody about Jeremiah Johnson's career. Him and I went to college together at Ball State. He was 2 years ahead of me. He went to Hazard, Kentucky for his first job, and lo and behold, when he left, I took his job in Hazard, Kentucky. He came to WTWO in Terre Haute here. And then a couple years after that, I followed him to WTWO here, a large part because he brought me along. And then he went to Fox 59 in Indy, and I took his weekend job at WTWO. And I can tell you now, he was here, I believe he'll tell you, but 2002 through 2005 or 03 through 05, something like that. But one of the times that I enjoyed most, I've been here for 22 years. I was a sports director for 15 years, so I've been around. But one of my favorite times working sports in the Wabash Valley was 2003 through 2005 when Jason Pinsky was a sports director at WTWO. JJ was the weekend guy, and I was the number 3 guy. Not only did we cover sports and take tremendous pride, but we had so much fun working together. I know we're going way back, JJ, in the day, but how much fun did you have working back in the day at WTWO in Terre Haute and the Wabash Valley?
Yeah. Well, I had a blast. I mean, it was the reason I got into the industry is I wanted to have a job that didn't feel like a job. And to me, it was fun, whether it was a Friday, trying to plan which games we were going to go to and how we were going to cover the Wabash Valley, or maybe a weekend of deciding to make a pilgrimage over to Indianapolis to cover the Colts and somehow get our weekend sportscast still covered as well. Or even for that matter, spring afternoons, grabbing some Rally's hamburgers and going to shoot some Indiana State baseball highlights. I mean, I loved every part of it. And as you mentioned, the people you work with make the jobs like that so special. So while you gave me some credit, I have to give Jason Penske a lot of credit for sort of teaching us both the ropes and how to do everything. And so great time. And really more 01 to 04. So 3 good years in the Wabash Valley. And unfortunately, we missed some of the Indiana State basketball success, or at least I did. You were able to experience some a little bit later. But again, to be able to be on the Indiana State basketball network back at the time, that actually helped get me opportunities with the IHSAA state championships, even while I was working at Fox 59. And then, even though I don't know that necessarily what I did in 01 to 04 helped me in 2014 or 15 to get the Pacer job, it had a little bit of a say. And the fact that I did sidelines for 3 years in basketball helped me be a candidate for the Pacers. And here I am today.
I want to thank our sponsors of the show again, Crow Equipment Incorporated and Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning. I know you covered the Indiana State. You talked about that. You got some great memories and stories of the late Royce Waltman. Any you want to share? You had a couple. I remember you sharing them with me, some legendary stories with him.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had to be always on your toes, but he definitely knows basketball, and obviously his background with Bobby Knight made some of his motivational tactics a little unpredictable at times. One story I'll share from, when you're sideline reporting, and I even have this today with the Pacers, when you're listening into the huddles, you have to be a little careful. You don't want to be too close where the coach immediately sees you and not the players and gets distracted. And you also have to be a little careful of what you report on. You don't want to report on necessarily strategy, although I'm not sure that there's time for the opponents to listen to the other broadcast and be able to relay what it is that they're trying to do. But one of the funniest comments I remember was at Illinois State, and there was a bad first half. And I think it was maybe something like 21-6, about 10 minutes through. and he looked at everybody and he just screamed, "Can we get to 10?" He says it like 3 or 4 times. By halftime, can we get to 10 by halftime? And it was probably against my better judgment, but I said to the producer, "Hey, I got a good sideline report," and I relayed that on the air. He never said anything about it, but that's probably one I wouldn't actually share today. If Rick Carlisle said something like that, I probably would just keep that one to myself and share it for maybe a text with friends. But that was a fun one. And maybe when we have longer form, or if we're back for a second, maybe this will get you to invite me back sometime. I'll share a Royce Waltman story from hosting his coach's show that I have to kind of brush off the cobwebs and remember everything, but it's a good one too.
I wondered if you go that route. I remember your story from the coach's show. That was an all-time classic. So when the Pacers keep winning here, maybe next week or the next couple of weeks, we're going to have you back on to share.
Yeah, we'll call that a tease, right? Maybe you can pick up some additional sponsors for that one.
Now, another thing I know you love doing, you were all about the high school sports, and you taught me that where I got it from, you and Jason. You loved especially Vincennes Lincoln, and you loved that Vincennes Lincoln Jasper rivalry that Jason taught us both so well to just love the Wildcats. How much did you enjoy, going to the southern part of the Wabash Valley?
Well, first off, I carried this over to Indianapolis. I started off when I would figure out where I wanted to go, as I hated on a Friday having to sit through traffic. And so, nothing against the Terre Haute schools, but we're down in Farmersburg at WTWO, and if you had to drive through, 41 and then figure out whether you're going to Terre Haute North or Northview, it just felt like I'd rather take the scenic southern roads to get to where I wanted to go. So I sort of just always went that direction. Plus, Jason had first pick and he had to anchor the sportscast. So he was always going to the Terre Haute schools. And so the logical next pick for me when I was picking schools is to go down to Vincennes or Washington, Lagodi, Bar Reeve. And then the people there always treated me so well that it made me want to go back. Or maybe, I don't know if these were one of your sponsors, but Bo's Pizza, you could always stop and get some pizza before a game. So I always like to do that as well. But definitely enjoyed those teams, those schools, and in that era, to go in the Wayback Machine, Curtis Painter, the quarterback, and to get close to a group of guys that was down at Vincennes Lincoln at the time, whether it was football and then also basketball, was a lot of fun. And actually, those relationships that you build and teams that you cover make it hard to actually leave, even though it was time and, family reasons and a number of things I needed to kind of spread my wings a little bit and try to get to Indianapolis. But I had a lot of fun, and I never could understand the things Jason would say about Jasper, because I said, don't they have the ability to tune us in a little bit? But what he said about Jasper made the Vincennes people love him even more.
We both, I still to this day get people that obviously in Vincennes love what we say about Jasper. And we both learned that from the King, Jason Pinsky himself, did we not?
Yeah, exactly. But good people, and there's times I wish I actually lived there and not here, because it seemed like it would be a great place to raise a family.
Now, I got to ask another person, because, you've been gone for, 21 years. I saw people ask about you here, and that means the impact you have. One is, and I know you love him, Charles Cardinal, Albert Cardinal from Bar Reeve High School, the man, the myth, the legend at Bar Reeve. I know you always loved your interaction, and you still get a chance to occasionally run into him now. Just how much did you always enjoy Mr. Cardinal?
Yeah, you think about a Class A school having sports information director, among other titles, and a media guide and game notes. And then I don't know how they report the scores now. My guess is you can find about everything you need via text or Twitter. But I always loved getting the 30 to 45-second recap of the game with Charles Cardinal reporting from Montgomery, Indiana on our voicemails. And even if we already had the score, I just like to play it back a couple days later. So really one of the gems of the Wabash Valley. And I've been in, I enjoyed, I don't get to do a lot of play-by-play. It's not probably my strength anyways, but I did get to call play-by-play of one of Bar Reeve's state championship appearances. So I definitely enjoyed and appreciated that opportunity, and worked on the sidelines for some of those games when they've been able to make the trip to Gainbridge Fieldhouse as well. So love Charles Cardinal, and hope he's doing well.
And another one, last reference, Ron McBride loved to pick on you back in the day from Bloomfield, did he not?
Yeah, I bet he picks on everybody. I don't know that it was just me, right?
He gives me a hard time too. But I know he started with you back in the day.
Yeah, well, Bloomfield is another great place to visit as well. And, between McBride and Steve Brett, those two guys, they're two of my favorite coaches to deal with. And I never took anything personal from either one of them. But it's been a long time since I've seen Ron McBride, so hope he's doing well also.
He is doing well. I see him a lot. So he's enjoying retirement these days. So a couple things I got to ask you about. People might not know this about you, but Jeremiah Johnson, JJ, was Charlie Cardinal at Ball State. He was the mascot.
We're going deep here on Beyond
He played
the
football
stands.
at Ball State, and then he was the mascot. I'm not kidding you. Charlie Cardinal, back in the day, the early 2000s, was Jeremiah Johnson. That is something that you absolutely loved. Did you not enjoy being a mascot?
Well, for sure. For one, when you go to college and you don't always eat as healthy as you should, you got to have a workout plan. So you'd be amazed at how much weight you can lose at one football or basketball game as Charlie Cardinal. But to explain to those who might wonder how that all happened, I got to Ball State. I knew I was going to get involved in the TCOM department, but I wanted to still be involved in sports. Thought maybe I'd have an opportunity to walk on the baseball team. That didn't work out, so it was sort of back to square one of what am I going to do with some of this free time. Saw an ad in the newspaper. How crazy is that? The newspaper, yeah. They had an ad for mascot tryouts, and I was like, well, I've always played sports, never been a mascot. Why not try out? And there was 20 people, like 19 of them had been their school's high school mascot, but for whatever reason, I had enough energy, and I filled the suit out well and was able to get the job. And then after that, still had that itch for football and went to some of the off-season workouts middle of my freshman year, made it through spring ball and was invited to walk on the team my sophomore year, but didn't give up the mascot. And I wasn't the only Charlie Cardinal. So that way, some of the football games that I was dressed, obviously there were other people that could have been Charlie Cardinal. So it was a fun sophomore year where home games I was dressed for the football team. Two of the away games I went to as Charlie Cardinal with the cheerleaders. And then one of the away games, I made the 60-man travel squad as the third quarterback at Northern Illinois. So kind of did a little bit of everything there in the sophomore year. And, Rick, it's a little bit of advice that I try to give people that want to get into the TV business is you got to be able to do a lot of different things. And not to say that being a mascot and a football player and a broadcaster in college all prepared me, but the versatility I think is important, and also to branch out. And when you start in TV, you got to learn how to edit. You got to be able to shoot. You got to shoot highlights. You got to be able to write. And then lastly, you got to be able to talk and communicate on air. But it's probably like fourth or fifth most important when you're just starting out. And so college, it was a great experience. I know you and I both speak highly of Ball State and what we were able to do there, but because of being at Ball State, it was just the right size where I could experience things on a big scale. I felt like, it's Division I. I was Charlie Cardinal for an NCAA tournament game for Ball State basketball. They haven't been back since, so that was a lot of fun. But also got to have a lot of experience in television, which helped me get a job in the career that I still have today.
I'll vouch for JJ. Ball State Communications is, one of the top 5 in the nation. It's just incredible. He speaks about being Charlie Cardinal at the NCAA tournament. He was Charlie Cardinal there. I was there covering it as a student way back in the day. A lot of.
So, do you remember who broadcast the game for CBS?
It was Raftery.
Vern Lundquist. Well,
Raftery.
It was probably Lundquist and Raftery. Yeah. I made a connection with Vern Lundquist at a journalism conference, and so then I remember being able to talk with him during the practice day, and that was a lot of fun as well. He was one of the all-time greats. So yeah, it probably was Raftery. I didn't remember who the analyst was.
Now I remember when you did the mascot. I don't know why, but like you and I did tons of road trips when we worked together in Terre Haute. So we talked about so many things. I remember you saying you did the Charlie Cardinal and you enjoyed it so much that you said you would not have mind being a professional mascot. Do you remember that? Like if you could have been the Philly Fanatic or that kind, like you would have seriously considered that, right?
Yeah, why not? Think about it. You work really hard for 2 to 3 hours. You get a good workout in, and then, one thing I didn't want to have was a normal, 9 to 5, 40-hour a week plus kind of job, even though the hours were more that we obviously had and still have today. Yeah, that's the next best thing to being an athlete, is it not? Boomer Boomer does a great job. I'm not as agile to be able to do the things that Pacers Boomer does. But I will say, when I graduated from college, May of 2000, and I had 3 months to try to find a job and figure it all out, and I was living at home, I was Who's Your Buddy, the horse mascot at Anderson, and it paid pretty well for 2 or 3 hours a night. So crazier things. If it maybe takes another 2 months to get a job, and all of a sudden a minor league mascot job opens up, who knows? Maybe I'd have gone the small market mascot route instead of small market television.
I love it. Another story before I let you go, and I know you get a kick at us. JJ and I covered the Colts at the Patriots 2004 AFC Championship game. It was our first big road trip together. And like I said, we were friends, but we hadn't hung out on road trips together. So I was a very hyper person, and JJ was very laid back. And I'll never forget.
I wish I had a cell phone back then.
AFC Championship game. How did you get woken up in Boston that day?
Rick Semmler jumping up and down on the bed saying, "We're at the AFC Championship game. We're at the AFC Championship game." Yeah, that one. I don't even need the cell phone video to relay it, although I'm sure your thousands of followers would appreciate seeing that. But just close your eyes and get that image of a fired up Rick Semmler. I don't even know what time. I think it was probably a 6 p.m. game. Yeah. And another story for another day would be how we actually back in the day had to get the footage that we shot on the air. Oh. Not as easy as sitting on your laptop and pushing a button and drop it into some folder. Had to go to TV stations in Boston and deal with.
Remember running through the parking lots in Indy to get to the TV stations in Indy?
Yeah, I mean, every time you wanted to come cover the Colts in Indy, you had to look at the time and try to figure out if you could get it all sent, and then book a satellite window of all things. Yeah.
We're old.
Unfortunately, we didn't bring the Colts a lot of success when we covered the Colts and Patriots together, but they did actually have some, and I think you were able to experience some of that. Yes. While I was for different stations.
Yes. We enjoyed a Super Bowl championship in Miami together, just for different stations. So, so much fun going down memory lane with you. And like I said, hopefully the Pacers do what we hope they can do, and have you back on the next couple of weeks. Anything you want to leave Pacer fans with as I let you go?
Well, for Pacers fans, I mean, it is a little bit different. I'm not actually going to Cleveland for the series because our coverage ends at the end of the first round locally. So I'll still be at the home games and hopefully helping provide at Pacers on social media some pregame, maybe some postgame content. But it'll be a different perspective for me, kind of watching as a fan a little bit as the series shifts to Cleveland. And then also maybe there'll be some work if they can make the Eastern Conference Finals. One of the things that if you're in Indiana, you love racers and Pacers. So I just hope the Pacers can beat the Cavs and get a series against either the Pistons or Celtics or Knicks and have Memorial Day weekend where you get Carb Day Friday, a game on Saturday, race on Sunday, and a game on Monday. That you saw that again last season. And so would it be awesome to experience that once again. I do want to give a shout out to your current employer. I'm glad you came back home. I'm glad you went where you should have been maybe all along, but and I'm glad the good people at WTWO are doing things the right way. And shout out to Tim Sanders. Obviously worked with him back in the day, and for his leadership and what's going on there. I'm always appreciative when I see some of the small markets still continuing to cover sports the right way, and to see you back there, with Grant and the team that, again, local sports is important. And not going to say any more, but it's nice to know that you guys are still doing things the right way and even expanding on the product. And I did want to pass along, my sentiments, was devastated to hear about Dan Reynolds, someone that, we worked with together. And, on a positive note, happy to see Jesse Walker still doing his thing. So there's not as many people there from the early 2000s as when we worked together. But, wanted to, pass along my thoughts for Doppler Dan and also give a shout out to Jesse as well.
Well, I appreciate the kind comments because my career certainly wouldn't be where it is today without JJ. He guided me. He helped me get jobs. So words of like that mean a lot to me. But great seeing you, bud. And I hope to honestly have you back on in a couple weeks.
I'll have a lot of time actually moving forward. So I won't be hard to find. Maybe hook me up with some of these sponsors for the next time.
Great seeing you, bud. So that does it for this edition of Beyond the Stands. Remember, you can always follow it on Spotify, CastBox, Pocket Cast, and iHeartRadio, and on WTWO's MyWabashValley.com. That does it for your host, Rick Semmler. Hope you enjoyed this Beyond the Stands.